Welcome to the Minds of Mountainfilm. I'm Sarah Holbrook, the First Lady of Mountainfilm. I'm also a television news producer, and I'm here with playwright and actress Anna Deavere Smith. Would I also call you an activist? I feel like your stuff is so activist.
I don't know. I think I'm a humanist.
Ah, okay.
That probably sounds really arrogant to say.
No, I think that works because you want to know what? I mean, even if it does just have a tinge of arrogance, your stuff is so brilliant from beginning till end. I think you can be as arrogant as you would like to.
No, it's not a good idea.
Oh, you wouldn't recommend it?
No.
Yeah,
No.
I don't feel like there's actually any inherent arrogance in anything that you do. I'd like to be arrogant on your behalf. Oops, I think I tapped my microphone. That wasn't so good. But anyhow, we're so glad that you're here. Tell us what brings you here. What are you doing here at Mountainfilm?
Well, David Holbrook asked me to come, and he and I did a short little thing for CNN right after September 11th, and you know, I was charmed by him then. I remained charmed by him, and so I came.
Wow, and how are you feeling about his festival, Mountainfilm?
You know, it's really great.
Yeah.
It's really great. And one of the things that interests me so much is how quickly the public has an interest in watching a combination between sort of aesthetic excellence and social commentary.
Right.
And I started a project in the 90s called the Institute on the Arts and Civic Dialogue at Harvard that's now called Artists Without Boundaries at NYU. And our goal is to convene artists from around the world who are using their work to deal with the world's most pressing problems. And so this is exactly what's happening here, and it's a feast for me to be here, to be learning about new filmmakers that I didn't know about. They're not new, but to me they're new.
Sure.
And to see some stories rendered in a new way, some stories I haven't heard about. By stories, I mean stories of problems in the world.
Right, right. Name some that are new to you, that you didn't know until you arrived here.
Here's a film that I know the history of, but to see Freedom Rider, right? I mean, of course I know the history of that, and I know I've seen many, many movies about it, but one of the things that Freedom Rider has done is to introduce the character of Diane Nash, who was a civil rights activist, very, very brave, and we normally hear that story told to us about male heroes. This one does that, but I was absolutely stunned to see her present right sort of in the heart of the movie. And I think that when we see a movie like Freedom Rider now, we can begin to think about the courage that activism really takes. And I think the courage of those people who rode to the South could be something that people now working in other enterprises, the environment, immigration, poverty, might want to adapt some of that courage.
Right, right.
So I guess what I'm saying too is to see it, to see how films from different areas, you know, sort of have resonance with each other, I think is really great.
Oh, right, exactly. How you can see one thing and then it can be applied somewhere else that you might not have thought of doing it that way. Yeah, yeah. Now, your work is a lot of times interviews, but then you perform the characters, the voices on stage. Have you met anyone here that you think, gosh, I want to sit down with that person?
I've met people through the films. I haven't really met a lot of people kind of socially.
We're keeping you so busy as a judge. I apologize.
That's okay. So there are a lot of people in the films who I would think would be interesting to interview. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what's your experience as a judge? You're staying very busy, but what's it like?
Well, you know, it's going to be hard to make a decision, really. You know, tonight we sit and we vote, and I guess that should be the case. And the prize is about $3,000, which I think is a handsome purse, but a lot of these enterprises deserve a lot of support, and so I hope that the prize for whoever wins it is just the beginning, and I hope that the exposure that the other films are getting is also the beginning of relationships of patronage, because all of these causes are worthy of the time and the money that people might have to contribute.
Right, right. We hear two words a lot here, hope and fear. Has your experience been one more of hope or of fear as you see the things that you've been seeing while you've been here?
I am pathologically hopeful person, so I would say it's mostly hope. Because every time I see a really good expression, then it means to me that the filmmaker had a lot of discipline and had the ability to find people, sometimes charismatic people, to help get the message across. And the other thing that I find hopeful is, as a person who trains artists and has educated artists for a long time, is this really interesting shift in what we think of as sort of the ego of a film director, because in the Q&As they really sit back and let the subject speak. And I think that's really, really interesting moment.
Is that here versus elsewhere where they're playing documentaries, or is that documentaries by and large, do you think?
I think I've seen it more strongly here than I've ever seen it.
Huh, I wonder what the difference is. Do you have any feeling yourself?
I'm not certain. I'm just sort of thinking through that. The
I've
extent
not heard
to
that
which
before.
the director of Gasland, sort of gave the stage to his subjects who came, and the director of music by Prudence,
right.
He really
he never spoke
at all,
right.
And his posture was down like that, and sort of that gunslinger, macho behavior.
Right, I created
of,
this,
of filmmakers, whether male or female, that I think it's just a sort of a cultural thing that people, we mimic what we see, has been a certain way that people have behaved, and sort of the ball cap and the studied nonchalance.
I can see it in my eye.
I'm not seeing it as much here, and I really like that.
Oh, neat, wonderful. Oh, I love that. Have you had a chance yet at all to meet any of the characters who are here? Have you met Prudence, for example?
I met Prudence in the airport, actually, in the Denver airport on our long trek across the mountain.
Was it an ordeal for you? I know it was tough for people to get here.
Look, when you think of somebody like Prudence getting here,
and
what that journey was, all the way from being poorly treated, beyond that's not even the word. I mean, it's a travesty. It's horrible what her life was like, and to come from that and Zimbabwe all the way to the Oscars, and then to here, our little journey dealing with, whatever airlines, we won't name them.
Right. A little tornado delay for a few
mild.
people. Yeah.
Kind of mild.
Jeez. Well, when you leave here, what do you think when you're describing this place to other people? What are you going to be able to best summarize it as?
That's a nice question.
I want you to put it in your words, because I think, sorry, I keep tapping my mic. I think of you as such a wordsmith yourself. I hate to even put words in your mouth like hope and fear. I want you to be able to bring some words my way.
It's a wonderful combination of artistic discipline and excellence, which is used to trumpet, like you think biblically of characters like David, the potential of a real call happening from out of this mountain to the world, attracting attention to vulnerable people, vulnerable land, vulnerable creatures, and calling out for the best in us. And I think that the crowd that you've attracted are the people who were answering to that call when it was a whisper, and they will have, and many of the people have been here before. One man from Salt Lake City is just in love with David and with everything that David has done here, and so proud of it.
Join the club.
Talking to him yesterday, and it's just a stranger. I don't even know his name. He's from Salt Lake City, and so I think that you really have the potential here to start a kind of a movement that's about helping that which is vulnerable survive, and things that are beautiful to us, whether it's in people or natural resources.
Now you're going to give a breakfast talk tomorrow. What words are you going to use to inspire your audience? I mean, you'll have a chance to
I don't know, because I don't know what I'm going to be talking about. A lady asked me today when I was getting ready to go into this fantastic film, Walking Barefoot to Timbuktu, asked me what I was going to talk about, and I said, well, what do you think I should talk about? And she said, well, I'm interested in your process, so maybe I'll talk about process. I think it depends on the audience and whoever is hosting me in the talk, how we kind of launch it.
Your process. I've seen some of your works, but I haven't been there when you've been working on them. It's a long process, I imagine. Not so easy to summarize, but can you try it for us here a little bit?
Well, it probably has a lot in common with some of the documentary filmmakers. I get interested in a subject, and then I go wherever I need to go to have that subject spoken about by people from multiple points of view. And that's what I do, and then after I collect all of the tapes and videos, I then study them, and then I create these characters. My grandfather said when I was a child, if you say a word often enough, it becomes you. So my task for the last many years has been to try to absorb America by absorbing the words as people speak them. So putting myself in people's words the way you would put yourself in other people's shoes, trying to learn more about this extraordinary place where I live. And my last project, I actually did interviews on 3 continents, so now moving into the world, at least where people speak English or there are translators, because I'm sadly limited in my linguistic ability.
Oh, well, maybe in the way that you don't speak 12 languages, but in no other way than that, let me assure you. And what is your next project?
Well, I just finished a project called Let Me Down Easy, which is about healthcare, the human body.
Let me interrupt for 1 second. Did you have an idea, because you must have started that years ago?
I did.
That it was going to come out exactly when we were all talking about healthcare?
No,
I mean, what crazy
that. Well,
timing.
because there were a lot of false starts. There were a lot of times that the show should have been produced that it didn't get.
Well, it got produced exactly when it needed to be.
So that was just sort of fate, I think. But I started working on that project. I was invited to the Yale Medical School to be a visiting professor to look at doctor-patient relationships, interview doctors and patients, and present for them, and just got very interested in that. So that was back in 2000. And the person who's really forward-looking, I think, is the person who was the head of internal medicine at the time, Ralph Horowitz. I think he was forward-looking because this was before these issues were really going to be in front of the whole public, and he wanted his institution to think about it differently.
Wow, and
he
they brought in a
saw
playwright.
that medicine being in the marketplace was just going to be a very, 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 it was bad, and it was going to get worse.
Yeah.
And so I think he had a lot of vision, and 96 is when he really invited me first. To think
So it took 4 years for you to get there?
Well, I was a little nervous about being in front of doctors. So it took me some time to
White
really
doctors
say,
as opposed to being in front of a live audience when you're by yourself on the stage.
Well, at that time I thought that I really didn't want to seem stupid in front of doctors. So,
okay.
Go
ahead, you can feel that way if you want to, who am I to say, but it seems odd to me. So anyhow, I kind of interrupted you because you were saying you had just done that, you've just finished that play.
And it's going on tour in the fall.
Oh, okay, so you'll continue.
It goes on tour for about 6 months starting in January. And then in terms of the theater, I'm not so sure what I'll do next.
It's interesting to hear that you put it on tape. Is that audio or videotape? And if it's videotape, would you ever think of making a documentary with the interviews that you do?
I think it's a great idea, and I'd actually really like to make a film, and maybe you all can be a part of that. I'd like to make a film of this performance because my other films, which are about race relations in America, are still being used in schools, and these were done in the 90s.
Yeah.
They're still being used in schools. The books are still being sold in schools. Kids are doing the play themselves, and I think that's one of the things I have in common with you, is trying to use things I know about acting and writing and collecting information and reading and thinking and listening, to use all of that to try to bring the attention of people to the problems of their lives.
Right.
So that would be the next real project, is to try to make a film of the performance.
Right. Oh, that's a great idea. Well, let us help you with that. You reminded me, the race relations, that was the Rodney King beating, and I was in the news business then, if you can call it a business. It's hardly a business, but
you don't think it's a business?
I mean,
it's a business that's in crisis. Most people say
yes,
it's in crisis.
Yes, I would say it's almost a philanthropy at this point. I mean, it's hardly for profit.
But only because it's being evaluated as if it were a business.
Yes, a business and entertainment.
Business model.
Yes, exactly, as opposed to the public airwaves and the public trust, which I feel very much it used to be.
And how about education or civic engagement?
Right, exactly.
Those
would
used
be
to
nice.
matter,
If you could,
but if we say that too loudly, we're speaking French and everyone else is speaking English.
Right,
so let's
exactly.
drop that.
God forbid French. But I was bringing you back to the 90s and the Rodney King beating, and I can remember, seeing it again and again in the control room or the edit room, and I was, maybe seeing it even more than the general public, but the general public saw it often enough that they stopped caring about it because it was repeated. And I wonder if people here have that experience when they see the Chris Jordan albatross bodies with all the plastic filling up their insides, or they see one kitchen faucet after another bursting into flames. If I know a picture speaks 1,000 words, but at some point, does it become overload and you just can't take it in any longer? And do you have a comment or an opinion on when that happens, maybe in this group at this time?
Well, I think we have to keep we have to keep repeating it. When Prudence came out on stage yesterday, we met her live. She came out singing Amazing Grace. Now, how many times have we heard that song?
And I'm getting chills right now thinking about her singing Amazing Grace
It has
yesterday.
no less value. And she sings it, and it has a different value than when it was first written or sang by the man who was bringing slaves across the Atlantic, you know, and when he sang it, when he said "saved a wretch like me," he was talking about being a person who had brought
Did he know
slaves.
he was a wretch for doing that?
Yeah, he had
Oh,
a
okay.
Christian, he became a Christian evangelist. He had one of those cathartic experiences and woke up and said, being a slave trader was a bad thing. I better, you know, ask God for my redemption. So Save a Wretch Like Me is about that. It's about a perpetrator. But I think when Prudence sings it, she's singing about something else.
So the repetition
And
doesn't
so
make
I
it
think
stale.
that repetition, if it is animated, if it seems original, if it is full of life and vitality, it's like what my grandfather said. If you say a word often enough, it becomes you. So I sit with the words that I say and say them over and over and over again, trying to have them knock on the door of my unconscious, that firmly shut door, until I feel some kind of transformation. So I don't think there's anything wrong with saying it often. I think, but it should be delivered beautifully and with meaning and thoughtfulness, and not just, oh, let's just put it out there like a McDonald's hamburger and try to sell it.
Yeah.
But are we really bringing another truth each time we bring it?
I like the way you've put that. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want to add to this whole mountain film experience?
No, just that I think maybe the other thing to say is that you all think about this experience as a multi-sensory experience, and that the films in the dark room, you know, necessarily we have to go in the dark room to see the films, but that you also, that all of us who are here have this extraordinary opportunity to be in this beauty. And I think, you know, you say hope and fear. I think one of the things that enhances the hope is that it's, again, against the background of this very, very enticing and seductive beauty.
It lifts your heart.
It lifts our heart, it lifts our soul, and it makes us think that, you know, if that is possible, if all of that is possible, then we are possible. And a lot of the things we see, too, are images of people doing amazing things on these mountains or in the water. And so I think that what keeps it so alive and so hopeful is the amount of possibility that we're breathing in just by looking every which way.
Well, you lift my heart and my soul, and I'm so glad for your art, and I'm so glad for your presence here today and this weekend in Telluride at Mountainfilm.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.